Hey guys, tonight we wander back farther than usual, through time thick with dust and myths barely whispered. You're not in Athens yet, not even in Greece as you'd recognize it. You're standing barefoot on crumbling stone, on a hill that hasn't yet learned it will one day wear marble. There are no gods here. Not yet, just firelight, fear, and the smell of something burning that definitely shouldn't be. To your left, a man with a bronze spear shouts at the sky. To your right, a woman traces lines in the dirt, not out of madness, but because she's figured out something about the stars. This place, whatever it is, feels like it's waiting for someone with sharper eyes and quieter steps. A woman maybe, with thoughts sharper than spears and calmer than temples. But you probably won't survive this walk through the pre-mythic wilds without a few strange surprises. Or maybe a rock thrown at your head by a god who hasn't been born yet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're listening from somewhere unexpected, let me know in the comments where you are and what time it is. I love seeing how far these stories wander. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The hill under your feet hums with potential, not metaphorically, literally. You can almost hear the rocks whispering beneath the soil, passing rumors like kids at a sleepover. Somewhere down there, the foundations of Athena's Parthenon are already dreaming of columns. But that's centuries away. Right now, the people here don't have a name for her. They speak of a sky woman, a warrior spirit, a storm cloaked in calm. The myth hasn't solidified yet. It's more fog than marble. You step through a village where weaving is a form of language, where women shape patterns into cloth that speak of constellations, lost rivers, and dreams they can't share aloud. There are no written records, just memory. Oral poetry passed like bread around a fire. And in those stories, a nameless figure keeps returning. Sometimes she carries a spear, sometimes she carries a spindle, sometimes she carries both. Historians still argue whether Athena was originally a goddess of war, wisdom, or weather. Some suggest she was an imported deity from Libya, where snake women and owl spirits already ruled the stories of the night. Others believe she was born fully Greek, carved from the minds of a culture obsessed with order and victory. But you're watching her grow right now, not from thunderbolts, but from fear. The fear of battle, the fear of drought, the fear of forgetting how to make sense of a world full of jagged things. She begins as a whisper on the wind, and somehow becomes a future. You cross a dried riverbed littered with bones, goat, sheep, maybe something with too many legs. The villagers have left offerings here. Broken pots, braided cords. A small stone owl with eyes too wide and a chipped beak. You pick it up, it's warm. Fringe tidbit for your sleepy brain. Before owls were associated with Athena, they were considered bad omens. Weird birds. Night stalkers. But Athena, she flips the script. The owl becomes her symbol. Wisdom with talons. A reminder that knowledge isn't always soft. As you walk, you notice the changes. The spears become straighter. The chants more complex. The stories more polished. And in them, she begins to take form. Not just a warrior. Not just a weaver. A mind wrapped in armor. A woman no one could touch, literally or metaphorically. You climb a small hill where an old man carves words into stone. Not letters, yet just marks. He doesn't know it, but he's recording prayers. To her, his hands shake, but his gaze is steady. She protects us, he mutters. From what you ask, though you know he can't hear you. From being stupid, he says anyway. And honestly, fair. You sit beside him as the sun dips below the horizon. The stars blink awake one by one, and the old man sighs. We need a goddess who doesn't need to be worshipped, he says. Just understood. And you realize Athena was never about sacrifice or spectacle. She was about structure, thinking, waiting, choosing your moment. She wasn't the thunder. She was the pause before it. And somehow, even now, she's watching you. Not judging, just curious. The wind picks up. You feel her coming. And for the first time in this long, strange walk through ancient dirt, you don't feel afraid. You feel seen. The air tightens around you, like a story about to unfold. You stand at the edge of something that doesn't exist yet. Olympus hasn't been charted. Zeus is still just a storm cloud with a superiority complex, and the pantheon is in flux. But tonight, that's about to change. You hear it before you see it. Thunder. Not the dramatic crash you'd expect, but a low, insistent pressure, like someone with a migraine and a god complex is about to do something irreversible. You climb a slope of scorched rock and olive ash. At the top, a man, tall, muscled, radiating lightning and petulance. Zeus. He's pacing, clutching his skull, groaning like the world owes him an aspirin the size of a temple. Around him, the other gods keep their distance. Hera sighs dramatically from her cloud throne, muttering something about men and their headaches. Hephaestus stands nearby, holding an axe that looks entirely too comfortable in his hands. Apollo is composing a song about it in real time, which helps no one. And then it happens. With a sound that splits the sky and possibly your eardrums, Zeus drops to one knee. Hephaestus steps forward, raises the axe, and yes, you're watching a god get emergency brain surgery. Fringe fact to sprinkle into your sleepy consciousness. In some versions of the myth, Athena wasn't born from Zeus, in pain. She caused the pain already alive, already thinking, already knocking on the inside of his skull. Like, hey, I've got ideas and I'd like to share them now. And then she arrives. Not a baby, not a child. A woman, fully grown, fully armored, glorious. She doesn't cry. She doesn't blink. She steps out of her father's forehead like a queen exiting a chariot, adjusting her helmet as if this is the most natural thing in the world. You stare, because everyone stares. Athena doesn't stumble. She surveys the crowd, eyes clear, face unreadable. She lifts her spear, not to threaten, but to point toward the horizon. I'm here, she says, and that's all. It's enough. Here's your mainstream historical nugget. Athena was considered Zeus's favorite child, not just because she popped out of his head, which is admittedly memorable, but because she never challenged his rule, not directly, not like Artemis or Dionysus or, gods forbid, Hera. She was clever. She played the long game. But you can already see it in her. There's a loneliness to being born fully formed. No childhood, no awkward teen years, no chance to not know everything all at once. And she knows it. That night, the gods throw a feast in her honor. Ambrosia flows. Toasts are made. Apollo plays something moody on a lyre. Ares sulks, because she outshines him. Hera raises a brow, but says nothing. Only Metis is missing. Ah, yes. Metis. The mother, the one swallowed by Zeus before Athena was ever born. Athena never mentions her. But when she lifts her cup that night, she looks upward, just once. You feel it, a silence too sharp to be accidental. Historians still argue whether Metis truly died inside Zeus, or if she lived on whispering counsel from the stomach lining of Olympus, teaching her daughter from the shadows. Some myths say it was Metis who crafted Athena's armor, forging her intellect in the darkness. Others say Athena was born without a mother because she was meant to belong to no one. But that absence, it echoes. You watch her later, sitting alone beneath a fig tree while the others sleep off their nectar-induced hangovers. She sharpens her spear slowly, methodically, not from paranoia, from habit, from thought, because thinking is what she does when no one's looking. She doesn't need applause. She needs purpose. You sit beside her, invisible, as usual. She doesn't acknowledge you, but the air shifts, like she knows someone is paying attention. She speaks once, not loudly. I was born thinking. You nod, unsure what else to do. Do you know how heavy that is? she adds. You don't answer, because maybe that's the point. You look around at Olympus, glimmering under starlight, a realm of ego and excess, of golden thrones and bronze muscles. And then, Athena, sitting cross-legged on a rock, quiet, sharp, watching the gods dream of war while she dreams of strategy. The breeze lifts her hair, the owl lands beside her, and somewhere, deep in the earth, a seed of an idea starts to bloom. The owl watches you, not in that casual, sleepy way birds usually do. This one sees through you, big eyes like full moons, blinks once, slowly, a twitch of its head, then back to watching Athena, like you're not even the most interesting shadow on this hill. You stay quiet. The goddess hasn't moved since she last spoke. The rock beneath her is warm from daylight long gone, and around her the world has gone still. Olympus has its parties and wars, its jealousies and flames. But Athena, she doesn't chase drama, she waits. And she listens, to someone no one else hears. You glance sideways at her. She's murmuring, not to herself, to someone beneath the surface. A name rides the edge of her breath, Metis. You remember the myth, barely whispered in the old texts. Metis, goddess of deep thought, first wife of Zeus, devourer of doubt, swallowed whole while pregnant with Athena. Historians still argue whether Metis died inside Zeus, or lived on as the whisper in his brain that made him smart enough to stay king. Some even claim she shapeshifted endlessly, evading death until she became thought itself, which feels poetic. But tonight, you feel her. You do, in the quiet, in the pores between Athena's sharpening strokes, in the owl's stillness. Athena doesn't speak of her often. Her name is a blade, precise, cutting, dangerous if overused. But in moments like this, when the night is too quiet to pretend, Athena lets it slip. She never got her name, she says to no one. Or maybe to you. You try to imagine Metis. They say she was cleverer than Zeus. That's why he feared her. She knew how the world worked before it had rules, and she knew how to change it. But she was too clever, so he swallowed her. As one does when faced with a woman who knows too much. Quirky tidbit for your mental collection. In some ancient cults, Metis was invoked in childbirth. Not Athena, not Hera. Metis, the one who was literally inside the god of gods. She was seen as the ultimate presence during labor. Silent, invisible, but absolutely essential. You imagine Athena's birth again now, with new eyes. What if it wasn't just thunder and pain? What if it was a jailbreak? What if Metis carved her daughter's armor with one hand and picked a lock of Zeus's skull with the other? You feel it differently now. Athena wasn't born of Zeus. She escaped him. And with her she carried the mind of Metis, the calm in chaos, the strategy behind strength, the thinker in a world of fighters. You look at Athena now. She sharpens her spear until it gleams silver in the moonlight. Not because she's preparing to kill, because she's preparing to understand. And understanding, in Olympus, is a far more dangerous weapon. You sit beside her as she mutters old phrases in a tongue even the gods have half forgotten. Her fingers trace sigils on her palm, notations, equations, reminders. You think she's drawing battle plans, but when you lean closer, you realize they're maps of people, of minds, of motive. She's memorizing not just actions, but reactions. The physics of personality, the flow of fear, the topography of pride. Because she's not here to charge. She's here to win. Not in combat, in complexity. And yet, for all her brilliance, for all her mastery of strategy and calm, you can tell she misses her mother. That absence clings to her like the scent of smoke long after the fire's out. It's in the way she pauses mid-thought, the way she stares into fire and doesn't blink, the way she listens more than she speaks. Athena wasn't just shaped by Metis. She is Metis, refined into focus, born of silence, made for action, and burdened by brilliance. You watch as she finally stands, brushing dust from her armor. The owl flies ahead, leading the way down a narrow path between clouds and consciousness. You follow, because where she goes next, ideas become cities, thought becomes law, and legends start watching you. You follow her down the path of stars and soil, barely visible but undeniable. The kind of path that doesn't exist until someone like Athena walks it. Her steps are silent, her mind is not. You don't hear thoughts, exactly, you feel them. Every turn she takes is calculated, every glance a hypothesis, every pause, a new thread pulled taut across her mental loom. This is how she navigates the world, with ideas sharpened like blades. Below, the world is stirring. Mortals still fumble in and out of war with alarming enthusiasm. The gods bicker endlessly. Ares throws a tantrum every other week, and Dionysus keeps inventing new ways to forget he exists. Zeus? He's already on to his next lightning bolt-worthy mistake. But Athena? She doesn't act unless she must. And when she does, it's clean, efficient, almost cold. You watch her step into a battlefield, not to fight, but to end the fight. She says nothing, just lifts her spear and looks, and that alone stops two armies mid-charge. Swords falter, shields drop. A breeze runs between them like a messenger from common sense. She doesn't need to scream. She doesn't need to bleed. She needs you to think. It's a different kind of power. Less showy, more dangerous. Here's your historical fact. In classical Athens, generals and lawmakers often invoked Athena's name, not to justify bloodshed, but to plan when not to shed it. She wasn't just a goddess of war. She was the goddess of war management, of knowing when the sword is too loud and when silence hits harder. But sometimes, even she feels the weight. You watch her retreat from the field, stepping around bodies that won't get statues or songs. She doesn't flinch, but you can tell she remembers every face. And yet something gnaws at her, because for all her wisdom, something is missing. She builds cities in her mind, complete with irrigation systems, clean governance, and owl-friendly zoning laws. But none of them feel alive. They're perfect, but sterile. It bothers her, not because she wants chaos, but because perfection is lonely. She climbs a ridge, her eyes scanning the horizon. She murmurs names of cities not yet built. Athens, Rhodes, Corinth, names that will become marbles and empires and museum plaques. But right now, they're just sketches in the margins of a world still deciding what kind of story it wants to tell. You sit beside her as the wind picks up. And she finally says it. I win too cleanly. You blink. She continues. They fear me, not for what I do, but for what I don't feel. And just like that, you understand. The armor? Not for battle, for distance. She's clad in thought, wrapped in reason, fortified by restraint. But inside, still that same daughter of Metis, still learning how to carry all the knowing without being crushed by it. Fringe tidbit for the night. The phrase Athena laughs only appears once in surviving Greek texts, and even then, it's unclear if she actually laughed or simply smirked politely. In a philosophical way, scholars still argue whether the goddess of wisdom had a sense of humor or just extremely sharp wit that cut too close to the bone. You'd like to think she laughs when no one's watching. Maybe at the absurdity of divine politics. Maybe at mortals who name their ships after her, then immediately crash them. Maybe at herself. Tonight, though, she doesn't laugh. She sits, still, waiting for a world to catch up, because she knows cities will rise, and fall, and rise again. Empires will try to wear her name like a badge, while ignoring everything she stood for. Statues will be built in her honor, and not a single one will show the weight behind her eyes. You close your own, briefly, trying to imagine what it feels like to be understood only in parts, to be praised for your spear, and never your silence, to be carved in stone for your victories, but not your restraint, And just when you think she's drifted into thought again, she speaks. Understanding is never complete, she says. It's just paused. You don't reply, because some truths deserve to hang in the air a little longer, like smoke, or the breath before a decision. Athena stands, brushes off a single leaf that had the audacity to land on her shoulder, and walks on, toward a city that hasn't been built, toward a legacy that won't be hers. Not really, but she'll shape it anyway, because someone has to. You follow her through olive groves so ancient they haven't even realized they'll be sacred someday. The branches lean low, heavy with fruit and silence. Athena walks ahead, her steps quiet, her thoughts loud. The owl above her glides from tree to tree, a flicker of shadow in a world that's learning how to name things. She stops at the base of a wide, gnarled tree, places one hand on the bark. You almost expect her to speak to it. Instead, she listens, because that's what Athena does. She listens first, always. You sit nearby, watching the wind brush over the leaves in patterns that almost seem intentional. Somewhere, a child is born. Somewhere else, a war begins. She doesn't move for either. You realize something here. Athena isn't cold. She's constant. The olive tree beneath her hand is old and knotted, twisted by wind and sun and time. But it stands, and it grows. And every branch, every fruit, every root reaches outward, quietly, strategically, persistently, much like her. And from this tree, you feel the shift. Not in myth, in meaning, because Athena, goddess of war and wisdom, is also the goddess of peace. The kind born not of passivity, but of planning, of foresight, of growing something that takes time. She doesn't throw flowers. She plants seeds, gives you a shovel, and dares you to be patient. Mainstream historical reminder: the olive tree was one of Athena's greatest gifts to humanity, according to the myth of how she won the city of Athens. While Poseidon struck the earth with his trident to summon a salt spring or a war horse, historians can't agree which. Athena offered an olive tree, quiet, useful, enduring, and they chose her. Barely. You wonder if she resents that. Winning by a sliver, losing the drama contest, winning the civilization award. She doesn't say, but she does pluck an olive, examines it, doesn't eat it, just holds it between her fingers like a thought too fragile to speak. Fringe tidbit for tonight. In some Roman-era reimaginings, Athena was also believed to have invented the flute. But when she saw her reflection playing it, face puffed, cheeks distorted, she threw it away. Not because it made her ugly, but because it distracted her from clarity. Athena doesn't tolerate confusion. Not in others. Not in herself. And maybe that's her curse. Because clarity makes you lonely. It sharpens you into something unrelatable. And God's help anyone who tries to date a symbol of logic. You watch as she begins to walk again, this time toward a cluster of scholars sitting under a crooked awning, arguing about geometry and laws and the shape of justice. They don't notice her, not at first, until the owl lands in the middle of the circle and blinks slowly. They fall silent, and Athena steps in, not to take over, but to ask a question. What happens when the right decision is the unpopular one? The scholars murmur, some shift uncomfortably. And you see it. This is what she really loves. Not battlefields, not statues. This, questions that matter, answers that take time. You follow her through towns where pottery carries prayers instead of water, into temples where her name is carved beside laws and city plans, into libraries where her statue leans over scrolls like a watchful tutor. She's in all of them, not grand, but present. Architect of the world's most functional beauty, but no one stops to thank her. No flowers, no parades, just respect and silence. And the occasional prayer whispered under the breath of someone who needs a solution more than a miracle. You see her pause again, at the top of a hill. The sun sets behind her like a curtain. Her eyes scan the land villages lit by oil, ships sliding toward harbors, people figuring out how to live without killing each other every Tuesday. And for the first time in a while, she smiles. Not widely, just enough. Enough to remind you that wisdom doesn't always look like answers. Sometimes it looks like the right question planted in the right mind at the right time. And if you're lucky, you'll know what to do with it. The sun dips low behind the hills, casting everything in amber, the olive groves, the temples, even Athena's armor, which for a moment looks like it's made of candlelight. You walk beside her through streets that don't yet have names, lined with houses that will one day be ruins. The scent of smoke and bread and something sharp like lime clings to the air. A city is breathing. She doesn't look tired, but you do. Every step is steeped in some new kind of thought, some ethical puzzle or civic structure your brain wasn't built to carry for long. But she's tireless, not out of ambition, but necessity. Her role isn't to be worshipped, it's to think through what no one else wants to. You arrive at the Parthenon, or what will be the Parthenon. Right now it's scaffolding and prayer, half-done columns, and optimistic geometry. A place more idea than temple. You expect her to stand in awe, to marvel at her own monument. She doesn't. She walks past it, pauses only once, and frowns. Because here's the truth, no one carves into the walls. The Parthenon wasn't built to glorify her. Not really. It was built to glorify Athens, to project power, to declare wealth, to make the world stop and stare. And Athena? She was the brand, the face on the poster, the silent signature of order, reason, imperial cool. Here's your mainstream fact. The Parthenon was completed during the height of Athenian Empire, financed largely by what we'd politely call mandatory contributions from allies. It was a flex, a billboard in marble. And Athena, she watched quietly as they built it, her name etched across every decision like an endorsement. But did she ever claim it? That's the question. You follow her into the inner chamber, where her massive gold and ivory statue is still unfinished. A sculptor brushes dust off her forehead. He spent a decade carving her likeness. He's never heard her speak. And when she stands beside it now, she says nothing. But her silence is loud. Because the Athena he's carving is not the Athena standing in front of you. The statue is beautiful, terrifying, a war goddess in full regalia, shield in one hand, spear in the other, Nike, the goddess of victory, perched like an accessory in her palm. But the real Athena doesn't look like victory. She looks like consideration. She looks like a plan made 6 layers deep, with backup contingencies and a full list of unintended consequences. You wonder if the sculptor would faint if he saw her raise an eyebrow. Athena walks to the base of the statue and reads the inscription. It's in her honor. It praises her strength, her wisdom, her protection of the city. And nowhere does it mention her doubt, her restraint, her mother, her questions. You watch her step back, take it in, not with pride, with distance. A fringe tidbit for your slow descent into sleep. Ancient rumors claimed the Parthenon's inner chamber was intentionally designed with awkward acoustics so visitors would feel watched, even if they couldn't hear a word being said. It was meant to unsettle, to remind, and if that doesn't scream Athena, nothing does. Outside, people gather. Tourists before the word existed. They light lamps, they chant, they leave offerings, bread, olives, tiny bronze shields. One man drops a scroll, stammering through a hymn he barely remembers. Athena watches, not coldly, just observantly. They love her image, but not her complexity. And she knows it, but she doesn't correct them, because she's too tired to explain, and too wise to try. You follow her back down the steps. She touches the stone briefly once, with the same care you might use to close a door you're not sure you'll walk through again. She leaves before the statue's eyes are finished, because they'll never match hers. You ask her, later, if the Parthenon meant anything to her at all. She thinks, then answers, it meant they were listening, at least for a while. You sit beside her in the dusk, watching her city sparkle like a crown. She doesn't claim it. She just holds the thought of it in her palm, like an olive pit she hasn't decided to plant. You're half asleep when you hear the loom, the soft, repetitive clack of thread meeting thread, the tug of tension, the whisper of a pattern taking shape. It's not coming from a temple or a palace. It's coming from a small hut on the edge of the city, one barely big enough to house a bed, a fire, and this strange, quiet magic. Athena leads you there, and she doesn't knock. Inside, you find her, not Athena, the other her, Arachne. She doesn't look like a threat. She's young, slender. Her hands move faster than your eyes can track. The tapestry she's weaving glows like it remembers things. Every line is a story, gods in disguise, mortals tricked and used, punishments handed down with divine flair. Athena stands in the doorway and watches her, says nothing, but her silence crackles. You sit beside them, quietly. The tension in the air thickens like thread soaked in ink. You're witnessing a myth on the verge of happening, and nobody's blinking. Mainstream myth recap. Arachne was a mortal woman, a weaver so skilled that people whispered Athena herself must have taught her. Arachne said, nope, she taught herself. And depending on the version, she challenged the goddess to a contest, or Athena challenged her, insulted by the mortal's pride. Either way, a contest was woven, and Athena lost, badly. You watch now as Arachne finishes her final panel, an unflinching display of the gods' most humiliating misdeeds. Zeus chasing women in disguise, Apollo cheating in contests, Poseidon being Poseidon. The thread shimmers. It's not disrespect, it's truth. Athena steps forward. You expect fury. Instead, she breathes in. And then, for the first time in hours, she speaks. This is perfect. Arachne flinches, confused. It's accurate, Athena adds, voice low. That's the problem. You see it then, the crack behind Athena's mask. Not anger, not jealousy, recognition. She sees herself in Arachne, not just the skill, the nerve, the way they both wield art like weaponry. She sees a mind unafraid to see clearly, and the gods. They don't like being seen. Historians still argue whether Athena cursed Arachne or saved her. The myth splits. In one version, she turns her into a spider out of spite. In another, Arachne hangs herself in shame, and Athena transforms her into a spider to give her a second chance, a way to keep weaving forever. You watch as Athena steps closer to the loom. This is how they'll remember me, she murmurs. Cold, punishing, proud, Arachne says nothing. She just stares at her goddess, hands still, the thread trailing from her fingers like a sentence she's afraid to finish. Athena takes the thread, snaps it, then ties it again, gently. Fringe tidbit for tonight's dreams. The Greek word for spider is Arachne, not because that was her name, but because of what she became. Every spider, every web, every silent structure strung between trees at night. It whispers her story, in patterns, in silk. You follow Athena out of the hut. Neither of you speak, not for a long time. Eventually, she stops beneath a cypress tree. They don't remember how the story ends, she says. You do. You were there. She didn't curse Arachne because she was wrong. She cursed her because she was right, and because no one was ready for that kind of truth. Not even the goddess of wisdom. She sits at the base of the tree, cross-legged. The owl circles once, then lands on a branch just above. They wanted a goddess of order, she murmurs, not honesty. And you wonder if that's been her burden all along. That her name is on every courthouse and university and battlefield. But her truth is woven in spider silk, clinging to corners no one bothers to clean. You lie back beside her and stare at the sky. A single thread drifts overhead, not from a cloud, from something spinning. Careful, patient, silent, Arachne still weaving, Athena still watching. And maybe that's what wisdom really is. Not victory, not clarity, just choosing to see anyway, even when it hurts. The sky is still a dark blue when Athena moves again. Not dramatically, no thunder, no clouds torn apart by divine declarations. She simply stands, brushes the dust from her knees, and starts walking. You follow, because of course you do, your footsteps muffled by the softened dirt. You pass through a grove of laurels and into a city that hasn't quite decided if it's finished becoming itself. Buildings half-built, amphorae waiting to be filled, sandals left mid-step like someone just vanished. Except they haven't. They're watching you from balconies, doorways, windows. Or more precisely, they're watching her. Athena doesn't wave. She's not the kind of goddess you approach with casual small talk. But she's known, and you notice something now. There are no children near her, no lovers, no pets, unless you count the owl, which might actually be smarter than most humans you've met. She's revered, but she's alone. This isn't new, it's who she's always been. The virgin goddess they call her, though not in the way people use that word now. Virgin, in ancient terms, meant independent, untouchable, entirely herself. Athena doesn't belong to anyone. Not romantically, not maternally, not even mythically. And that unsettles people. You pass a courtyard where statues of the gods stand in their usual poses. Aphrodite with her perfect gaze. Hera looking like she's about to scold someone. Demeter holding wheat like it's a personality trait. And then Athena. Stiff, stoic, spear at her side. You look at her statue, then at the woman walking beside you. And they're not the same. The statue is simplified, polished. The woman is layered, tired, focused, very slightly annoyed by bad sculpture. You realize something, quietly. Athena never married, never had a child, never partnered with another god or mortal. She was the only one in Olympus who didn't have a scandal to her name, and somehow that made her the weird one. Mainstream fact. Ancient Greeks often painted Athena with armor, but without expression. She was decorum incarnate, a political ideal in a world full of chaos and wine-fueled drama. But even then, poets whispered, she was too hard, too cold, not woman enough. And yet, she built cities. She invented the bridle. She turned battle into policy. She turned thought into law. All without falling in love, or falling at all. You walk behind her now through a colonnade where philosophers whisper under their breath. One of them glances at her and says, she has no tenderness. She stops, turns, and says nothing. But the man looks down like a child, caught speaking out of turn. Here's your fringe tidbit. One obscure myth claimed Athena did once try to love a mortal poet who wrote about justice. But the moment he saw her face and didn't fall to his knees, she disappeared, because love for her required not submission, but understanding, and that was too rare. You sit with her near a well, not a magical one, just water. Cold, clear, real. She drinks from her palm, then wipes her mouth with the back of her hand. You do the same, because you've long given up pretending you're not mirroring her. She watches you for a moment, then asks, why do they fear what doesn't need? And there it is, the question that cuts through time like her spear. They don't fear her power. They fear her independence. A goddess who asks for nothing is harder to control than one who demands tribute. And Athena? She doesn't need to be fed. She needs you to think, and that's a much taller order. You walk together as the sky softens to dawn. The stars fade one by one, like a theater closing down after the final act. She pauses before a house. Not a temple, not a library, a home. There's a woman inside, old, wrinkled, weaving something with fingers knotted by time. She doesn't look up. She doesn't stop. She just keeps weaving. Athena smiles. Barely. Not everyone forgets, she whispers. And you realize not all her legacy is marble and myth. Some of it lives in repetition, in craftsmanship, in quiet women who work without witness. You stand together in that silence. And for once, it doesn't feel lonely. It feels earned. The owl leaves first. Not in a rush, just a silent lift into the lightning sky. Its wings make no sound, only a hush, like someone smoothing the wrinkles out of time itself. Athena watches it go, her gaze unreadable. Then she turns and begins the slow walk back to the city's edge.
You follow as always.
But something is different now. She's holding something, a shield, but not the polished kind, made for ceremonies. This one is old. The bronze is dulled, the rim dented, the center decorated with a face you can't quite look at directly. Medusa. You recognize her. Even distorted in metal, even mid-scream. Or is it mid-warning? You pause, your breath catching without permission. Athena notices. She still speaks. She says, you nod. Because of course she does. The Gorgon's face glares out from the center of the shield, not as decoration, as protection. The famous aegis forged by Hephaestus, or maybe by no one at all, depending on who you ask. But everyone agrees, it bears Medusa's severed head. Athena carries it into battle, but never explains why. Historians still argue whether she cursed Medusa or saved her. Some say she punished her for desecrating a temple. Others insist Medusa was the one desecrated, violated by Poseidon, and Athena gave her a gift that also exiled her. Neither version sounds like justice. Both sound like someone trying to explain away a silence that screams. Athena holds the shield up to the sun. The face doesn't blink, doesn't rest, just is, locked in metal, used by the woman who might have been her only witness or her final betrayer. Fringe tidbit to keep your mind pacing while your body rests. In a few late versions of the myth, Athena didn't take Medusa's head from Perseus. She gave him the mission, gave him the tools, sent him, like a general dispatches a soldier to end what she could not forgive herself for doing. You watch Athena now, still staring at the shield. She doesn't flinch, but you can feel it, a discomfort, not guilt. She doesn't indulge in that, but maybe memory. You sit beside her as she sets the shield down gently, as though the face still has nerves. I gave her eternity, Athena says quietly. You don't respond, because it sounds like a justification, and she knows that too. It was either silence, she adds, or being forgotten entirely. And you finally understand, this isn't about victory or vengeance. This is about visibility. Medusa was cursed, transformed, feared, and then after her death, she became useful. Her face weaponized, her story simplified, her pain repurposed. And Athena, she's done the same to herself. Wielded her intellect like a blade, turned emotion into armor, used silence as a kind of control. But tonight, the shield trembles in the grass. Not with magic, with presence, because no matter how long you trap truth in bronze, it remembers. Athena picks it up again, straps it to her back, and whispers, not to you, not to the gods, but to the face no one wants to look at. They still fear you. And then, even quieter, good. You walk beside her through fields now littered with tiny flowers, pale blue and purple, like someone spilled the sky across the ground. She doesn't step on them. She avoids each one with the kind of precision only she could manage. You realize she's not returning to Olympus tonight. She's heading elsewhere. Not home, forward, toward another court, another city, another moment where she'll have to make a choice between power and truth, between silence and resistance. You wonder how often she chooses silence. You wonder how often it's chosen for her. She glances at you suddenly, not sharply, but knowingly. "You think I never cry?" she says, as if she's heard your thoughts. You blink. She smiles. "Barely. I don't." Then adds, "But I remember everything." The ground beneath your feet hardens, not because it's turning to stone, but because civilization has begun to settle. Dust becomes road, roads become borders. People gather around names and rules and consequences. And in the middle of it all, a courtroom, not a temple, not a battlefield. A place where words are weapons and silence is verdict. Athena walks ahead of you. The shield is still strapped across her back, Medusa's face hidden from view, but the weight of it very much present. You step into the Areopagus, the rocky outcrop where Athens will one day hold its first great trials. Right now, it's just a circle of stones and a very tense silence. At the center, a young man waits. His name is Orestes. He's just killed his mother, and now the gods have to decide if that's fine. The Furies are here, cloaked in rage and law older than language. They hiss through their teeth. Ancient spirits of vengeance who don't care about context or character arcs. Blood for blood, that's their rule. Simple, brutal, consistent. Orestes pleads innocence. Not because he didn't do it, but because the world made him do it. Apollo defends him, slick, golden, theatrical, says the murder was just, says his mother, Clytemnestra, had killed his father first. Says Orestes did what honor required, that it was necessary, that it was destiny. Athena watches it all, silent, weighing. When it's time to vote, she doesn't rush. She walks around the circle, looks each judge in the eye, and then she casts her vote. In favor of Orestes. The trial ends in a tie. Her vote breaks it. And the Furies? They burn. Not literally, but you feel the fire of their fury. They shriek. They tremble. They threaten to tear the city down for daring to overwrite the old laws. Athena raises a hand. "Vengeance ends here," she says. "We will not be ruled by blood." It sounds clean, noble, final. But as she turns away, her jaw clenches. Historians still argue whether she voted from logic or loyalty. Was she swayed by Apollo's charm, by the need for progress, by the discomfort of standing too close to the old messy gods? Or was she simply tired of cycles? Fringe tidbit for your moral maze. Some ancient texts imply Athena wasn't fully convinced. That she voted for Orestes not because she believed him, but because she believed in moving forward. In law over legacy, in systems over screens. You sit with her afterward. She doesn't speak for a long time. Finally, she says, "Justice has a cost." You nod. Then she adds, "And it's rarely paid by the powerful." You look back toward the court. The judges are dispersing. The Furies slink into the shadows, their rage restrained but never erased. Orestes disappears into the myth machine. His name will live on. So will his sin. But Athena, she has to live with the decision. Because that's what wisdom does. It doesn't just choose. It carries. She stands, dusts off her hands, and murmurs something almost too soft to hear. Balance isn't peace, but it's better than fire. You walk with her down the slope of the Areopagus. The city buzzes around you, markets, builders, philosophers arguing in sandals. None of them know that the rules just changed. None of them know how close they came to losing everything to fury. And none of them thank her. She doesn't expect them to. She turns one last time to look at the courtroom. Then she says, to you and maybe to herself, they wanted someone to take the weight. And you finally understand, Athena isn't just the goddess of wisdom. She's the archive of every decision too complicated for a statue, of every truth that doesn't fit into a myth, of every silence that wasn't really silence, just waiting. You follow her back into the city, where no one notices her passing. Because justice, when done right, doesn't leave footprints. It leaves possibility. The city glows beneath the sun. 1,000 rooftops stitched together with smoke. ambition, and the occasional chicken that refuses to stay pinned in. You trail behind Athena as she walks toward its heart, toward a contest that shouldn't be necessary, but always is. You're back where it all began, Athens. Though it wasn't always hers. The name, yes. The myth, yes. But the city, there was a fight, and not a metaphorical one. You crest a ridge and look down upon a younger version of the city. Columns just being raised. Citizens still arguing over where to put the amphitheater. Gods hovering, because of course they are. The divine equivalent of nosy neighbors. In the center of it all, a challenge. 2 gods, 1 city. Winner takes the name. Poseidon arrives first, naturally, because subtlety is not his thing. He storms in with sea spray on his breath and a trident bigger than most temple doorways. He raises it high and slams it into the ground. The earth shudders. And up springs a saltwater spring, or maybe a horse depending on who's telling the story. Either way, it's loud, impressive, unnecessary. You glance at Athena. She's calm, focused, strategic. She steps forward and plants something into the soil. No drama, no special effects. An olive tree, small, plain, quiet, and immortal. Because Poseidon may offer speed and spectacle, but Athena offers sustenance, shade, oil, peace. The people gather, murmuring, weighing, and the vote is cast. They choose her. Barely. Historians still argue whether it was the women of Athens who tipped the scales in her favor. Some myths say it was all down to a few female votes, that the city was matrilineal then, and the men resented it. So much so that, after the vote, they took away women's political rights altogether. You look at Athena. She says nothing. But the corner of her mouth tightens, because even when she wins, it's never without cost. The olive tree still stands, centuries later, a symbol, a thank you, a placeholder for all the quiet victories that didn't make it into poems. Fringe tidbit, some travelers in modern Athens swear the tree still grows in the Erechtheion, beside the Parthenon, gnarled, hollow, and impossible to kill. You sit beside it now, its roots cool beneath your fingers. And you wonder how many people have walked past this tree without ever asking what it cost her. Athena circles it once, places her palm to the trunk, whispers something. Not in Greek.
Not in words.
Just understanding. Then she straightens, brushes the dust from her hand, and turns to you. They never chose me for love, she says. They chose me because I make the most sense. And that's true. Athena is the goddess you respect. Not the one you ache for. Not the one who saves you in a storm. She's the one who draws the map, teaches you to swim, and expects you to survive. You watch her walk the city now, and it finally hits you. They built this place in her image, not out of devotion, but out of aspiration. Athens isn't a city of saints or martyrs. It's a city of ideas. And Athena, she isn't their patron. She's their mirror. She watches the artisans in the agora chiseling philosophy into stone. She watches the politicians speechifying over olive oil deals. She watches the teachers drilling geometry into young skulls like it's the most sacred ritual in the world. And still, no one speaks to her. They don't have to, because she's everywhere. Her wisdom isn't whispered in temples. It's baked into the brick, etched in the law, threaded through each debate in the open air. And yet, you can tell, she's never felt truly wanted, only needed. And maybe that's lonelier. You stop walking when she does, and she says, they don't have to love me. Pause. They just have to remember why they chose me. The sun dips behind the Acropolis. The olive tree sways slightly. And you realize this city, this Athens, has always been one heartbeat away from forgetting what it stands for. But Athena, she never forgets. That's what she does. She remembers, even when they don't. Especially when they don't. Night again. Though the sky barely notices. Just smudges the sun out with a charcoal hand. and lets the stars blink into view like a tired confession. You follow Athena as she climbs higher past the markets, past the homes, past the places where mortals worry over wine and weather. You're going to the Parthenon, or what will become the Parthenon. Right now, it's scaffolding and sketches and arguments about column width. She walks among the workers, silent as breath. No one sees her. Or maybe they do, and just pretend not to, like you do when grief enters a room and rearranges the furniture. She stops near the cornerstone, looks at it like she's trying to remember why it matters. Because that's what this whole thing is, memory in marble. The Parthenon will one day be hailed as perfection, symmetry, harmony, reason turned to stone. But for now, it's a mess. And Athena loves it more like this. You crouch beside her, watching stonemasons mutter about measurements, chalking lines, checking sun angles. One of them sneezes and ruins a day's worth of dust calculations. It's beautiful. Athena doesn't bless the building. She doesn't need to. She's already in it. In every careful line, every balanced weight, every proportion drawn from the golden ratio. Yes, that's your historical fact of the night. The Parthenon's design secretly honors math more than mythology. Ratios like 1:1:1:6:1:8 are hidden in its every breath. Historians still argue whether this was intentional genius or just a cosmic accident made by smart people with rulers and too much time. Either way, Athena smiles, because a building that makes people feel something, even confusion, is a kind of spell. Then she does something strange. She takes off her helmet and sets it down on the marble. No one's watching, except you. Without it, her features soften. She looks, not younger, but closer. Like she's moved a step down from Olympus. Like she's allowing herself to just be here, without needing to prove she belongs. You ask softly why she doesn't let people see her like this more often. She answers without turning. Because when you show your mind, they admire you. But when you show your heart, they expect to own it. And there it is, the real reason Athena wears armor. Not because she's afraid of war, but because she's tired of what happens after peace, when people try to turn wisdom into obedience. When they name buildings after you, then ignore everything you stood for. When they carve your face in stone, but never look at you as a person. Fringe tidbit to chew on as you fade into your pillow. In ancient Athens, there was a ritual called Panathenea, where citizens would parade a giant woven robe to clothe her statue. Every 4 years, it was rewoven, a fresh peplos for the unaging goddess. They clothed the idea of her, not her body, just the idea. Athena sighs. You realize that she knows how myths work, that stories aren't about truth, they're about utility. And sometimes, a god has to accept being misunderstood, if it means something wiser survives. She picks up her helmet again, brushes a thumb across the crest, but doesn't put it back on. Not yet. Instead, she walks to the edge of the scaffolding and looks out over the sleeping city. Lights flicker like nervous thoughts. The breeze smells of olives and future regrets. She speaks, low and slow. They will forget who I really was. Then she smiles. Just a little, but not what I gave them. You stay quiet. Because what do you say to a goddess who's just admitted she's already a ghost? The stars inch across the sky. The Parthenon waits to be finished. Athena stands in the middle of it all, helmet in hand, unreadable. And in that silence, something becomes very clear. She never needed worship, just witnesses. And tonight, that's you. You wake, if you ever slept at all, on the steps of the nearly finished Parthenon. The air has that cold before dawn sharpness, like the city itself is holding its breath. Athena stands nearby, arms crossed, watching the horizon with an expression that says she's seen too many suns rise and still isn't sure what they're trying to prove. This time, she speaks first. Want to see what they won't write down? Of course you do. You follow her,
away from marble and myth, down winding streets, and into the cracks of the city where the official stories forget to look, past the theaters and forums, past the symposiums where drunk philosophers compare syllogisms and sandals, down to the riverbanks where forgotten gods hum to frogs. Because here's the truth, not every story survives, and not every version of her was flattering. She shows you one painted faintly on a ruined wall, Athena, but not quite, thinner, sharper, angry, holding the head of a child, not a monster. You freeze. She watches your reaction. This, she says, was a version whispered by the frightened, the ones who saw her not as a protector but as a punisher, who thought wisdom was just cruelty wearing glasses. You ask if it was true. She shrugs. Sometimes, fringe tidbit to tuck into your pillowcase, there are depictions of Athena in older, pre-Hellenic scripts where she's not the goddess of wisdom at all, but of storms, owls, or even snakes. Historians still argue whether she evolved from a fusion of older goddesses or whether the Greeks just needed a female figure who could out-reason their war-hungry boys and also stab things. You step into another ruin, this one smaller, more intimate, a woman's home. Inside, a clay statuette of Athena tucked on a shelf beside herbs and a child's toy. No temple, no sacrifice, just presence. Athena runs a finger across the figure's head. That's the real devotion, she says, the ones who don't shout about it. She tells you stories, then, of seamstresses who whispered prayers over every stitch, of widows who invoked her before signing contracts no man would help them read, of daughters who lit lamps beneath her image, not to worship, but to remember what strength looked like. You begin to understand, Athena didn't live in marble. She lived in margins, in decisions made quietly, in questions asked that no one wanted answered, in women who weren't supposed to be reading scrolls, but did anyway. Historical fact break, softly delivered. In classical Athens, women weren't considered citizens. They couldn't vote, own property freely, or represent themselves in court. Yet Athena was their goddess. A female figure of supreme intellect and autonomy in a society that denied both to actual women. Make it make sense. It doesn't, but it also does, because maybe that was the point, to imagine power where it wasn't allowed. To name a city after the one goddess who proved you could build something eternal without permission. Athena crouches beside an old well, taps the edge with her knuckles. They stopped coming here, she says. You ask what changed. They got comfortable. And with that word, something heavy hangs between you. Comfort, the thing that makes you forget what you fought for, that dulls wisdom into trivia, that carves her name into coins, but stops asking what she wants. Athena straightens, looks at you. They turned me into a statue so they could stop listening. You want to protest, say her influence lives on, say people still tell her stories. She raises an eyebrow. Do they? And you realize, even memory, if not revisited, becomes myth. And myth, when flattened, becomes wallpaper. Background, pretty, harmless. But Athena, she was never harmless. She was the question at the end of every answer, the silence after every applause, the part of the mind that whispers, try again. And tonight, walking beside her in forgotten alleys and memory side streets, you see her more clearly than ever, not as a goddess, but as a witness of progress, of failure, of attempts, of you. You reach the edge of the city, the hills beyond sleep under constellations and unanswered prayers. Athena stops, turns, and smiles, not because anything is fixed, but because you stayed long enough to see. You follow her farther now, beyond Athens, beyond even memory. It feels like the hills roll out beneath your feet like pages yet to be written, and the stars above lean in a little closer, curious about where this story ends. Athena doesn't speak for a while, just walks, quiet, like she's giving you space to hold what she's just shown you. And you do. All of it. The statue on the shelf. The uncarved myths. The women who prayed with lamp smoke and syllables, the parts of her no one put in temples. Eventually, she stops. You're on a small rise, a place with no name. Just wind, rock, and the occasional persistent owl. She sits. You sit beside her, and for a moment, nothing needs to be said. Then slowly, she begins to trace lines in the dirt. Symbols, maybe, or just nervous fidgeting from a goddess who's carried the weight of expectation since the moment she sprang fully armed from Zeus's skull. You ask her what it felt like, being born like that. No mother, she says, no softness, just strategy. She doesn't say it like a complaint, more like a fact you live with, like gravity. Mainstream historical fact. In most versions of the myth, Athena was born from Zeus's head after he swallowed her pregnant mother, Metis, the goddess of wisdom. Just your typical family dynamics, murder, ingestion, brain burn. And yet, even now, scholars still argue whether Metis truly vanished, or whether she lived on inside Athena, making her a goddess of double minds. 2 wisdoms, 2 silences, 2 songs. You ask if she ever felt incomplete. She chuckles. Not incomplete, just untested. There it is again, that thirst. Not for glory, not even for justice, but for clarity. To understand, to refine. To watch a thing crumble, then figure out why. Athena's worship wasn't ecstatic. No orgies, no wine-drenched festivals with tambourines and questionable decision-making. Her followers built libraries, designed aqueducts, wrote laws, and maybe that's less fun, but it lasts. Fringe tidbit to carry in your dreams. The owl, now so tightly associated with Athena, may not have been her symbol originally. Some historians suggest it was borrowed from earlier deities in Crete or Mesopotamia, where the owl meant death, not wisdom. But the Greeks, they flipped the meaning. Because they do that. They edit the gods until they reflect themselves. You lie back now, spine against the ground, eyes tracing stars. Athena lies beside you, though not too close, because intimacy is a language she only speaks in parentheses. You ask her the quiet question. Not out loud, just in your breath. Do you ever wish you were loved like Aphrodite? She doesn't laugh. She doesn't get angry. She just says love fades, but every generation still needs a teacher. And there it is. Athena was never about adoration. She was about transmission, passing knowledge forward one firelit conversation at a time. Not for praise, for progress. You turn your head. She's looking up too, at the same stars, at the same silence. Maybe you're not so different. She once taught kings. Now she teaches you. And maybe that's enough. Because in this moment, this pause in time where nothing is demanded and nothing is expected, you understand the rarest thing a god can give. Presence, not thunder. Not prophecy, just being here. You don't remember falling asleep, but you do remember waking. If you can call this waking, it's more like drifting up from the ocean floor, lungs full of dream silence, ears ringing with forgotten names. The stars are still above you, unmoved. Athena sits beside you, exactly as before, her fingers absently braiding a wild grass stem. You realize she hasn't left your side all night, and she notices you noticing. Most gods don't stay this long, you murmur. She shrugs. Most stories don't let them. You both laugh, and it's the kind of laugh that isn't loud, just known, shared, the kind that says, we've been through something, and now we get to sit in the after. She turns to you now, fully, and you see something behind her eyes. Not regret, not even pride, just completion. You've walked through my forgotten places, she says, seen me unarmored, heard what no temple echoes. You nod, and she smiles. Then, let's go one more step. She rises. You follow. You crest the last ridge where the hill drops into a valley filled with mist. There's no path, just instinct. Athena leads you to a place that doesn't appear on any map, a grove. At its center, a pool. Still, quiet, moonlit. She kneels beside it, invites you to do the same. You see your reflection, tired, curious, changed. She sees hers too, and for the first time, they look alike. You've carried part of me with you, she says, and left part of yourself behind. And that's it, isn't it? That's what mythology really does. It doesn't teach lessons. It doesn't demand belief. It mirrors, shows you who you are, if you're brave enough to look. Fringe tidbit for your final dream. Some versions of the myth say Athena never cried. Not once. Not even at the fall of Troy, or the death of heroes she favored. But in an obscure Etruscan inscription, she's called Athena Lacrima, Athena of Tears. Historians still argue whether it's real or just a mistranslation. But sitting here now, beside a pool that remembers every name ever whispered into the wind, you believe it because even gods deserve a moment to break, a moment to feel, a moment to be held, not as a legend, but as a thought unfinished. You ask her, what happens now? She doesn't answer, not in words. Instead, she dips her fingers into the pool. Ripples spread. And for a moment, you see not just your face, but 100 others' faces who came before, who dared to wonder, who learned something they didn't expect from a goddess they thought they already knew. Then the surface calms. She stands. And this time, you know she's leaving. Not out of coldness, but because that's what mentors do. They appear, they teach, they vanish. Not because they weren't real, but because you are now. Athena gives one final glance over her shoulder. You remember what I told you in the city? She says. You do. Statues are for the ones who stopped listening. She nods, pleased. Don't be one of them. And just like that, she's gone. Not exploded into light, not lifted into the sky, just walked away, leaving you with the stars, the pool, and the heavy, wonderful silence of having been seen. You lie back, the night exhales, and you let yourself fall, one last time, into sleep. You breathe out slowly now. Feel the weight of your limbs ease into the mattress. Let the air wrap itself around you, like a linen shawl woven in some old Athenian loom. Soft, worn, carrying the scent of olive groves and parchment and stories that take their time. The world you walked through is still with you. Stone columns stretching upward, candlelit scrolls whispering half-finished thoughts. A helmet left behind, just once to let the wind kiss a goddess's brow. You don't need to remember every detail. You've already absorbed what matters. Because the truth is, the wisdom of Athena isn't locked in temples or myths. It's in the questions that stay with you long after the story ends. The ones that flicker in the quiet spaces. The ones that turn your thoughts gentle right before sleep. So let them do just that. Let them soften. Let the night unspool you thread by golden thread until you're not thinking anymore, just feeling the weight of stillness, the hush of understanding, the comfort of knowing you don't have to be a goddess to carry a little wisdom in your chest. Tonight you listened. Tomorrow you'll remember in quiet ways. A pause before a decision. A thought before a reaction. A smile at your own reflection. Because someone divine once mirrored it back. Now let the stars fade behind your eyelids. Let your breath slow. Let the hum of the fan, or the wind, or the earth itself carry you just a little farther into that quiet space where you are fully, completely held. No armor, no noise, just peace.